Well, here you can see the corrosion, all that dark finish there, that's mostly corrosion on that mechanism plate. And of course the shutter case was the same as that before I cleaned it, and I actually had to polish that with metal polish to remove that corrosion. So hopefully I can do the same with this mechanism plate and restore that to some semblance of normality. It's just a pretty nasty looking mess at the moment. I'll get onto that, I'll show you when I've got that clean. Well, I was able to clean up the mechanism plate, and as you can see the blades are very snappy in their action. That's nice and clean. I think the retard gear train is going to be good. I've flushed that out really well and lubricated that with some graphite powder, and I think that's going to behave itself. This little latch here, which serves as part of the latching mechanism which holds the shutter in the cocked position, that was very stiff. It didn't really want to move. That was just corrosion under here. So I had to remove that from the mechanism plate, clean away all the corrosion, make sure it was all nice and clean, and I lubricated that lightly with a bit of graphite powder. That all appears to be fine. The pallet wheel down here seems to move smoothly. I think that this is probably going to be fine. Of course, I've got to replace a lot of the missing pieces because a lot of things have been are missing, or like this flash contact that's ruined. The moving flash contact here is just twisted up in a knot. I've got no idea what that was all about. That's just a piece of the flash contact. The other stuff, well, this was a puzzle because this is two pieces and it's held together by the action of this tiny spring. And normally if there's a problem it's because that spring's unhooked or broken, and so people couldn't fix it and they've done something else. I can see corrosion on here, but that spring is present, so I expect that that part will work. Again, that's part of the latch mechanism that holds the shutter in the cocked position and releases it at the appropriate time. This is the wheel that drives the pallets. It's a bit discoloured, but I think that'll be fine. Here are the pallets. The pallets rattle backwards and forwards against the pallet wheel, and that controls the timing and the delay, so that when the flash is triggered, when it's on the M setting, when the flash is triggered there's a slight delay caused by the pallets running down before the shutter blades actually fire off and expose the film. And that's so that flash bulbs take a noticeable length of time to start burning at peak brilliance. They're not effectively instant like electronic flash, so they need a bit of lead time before the shutter gets to full opening. So it's looking promising. I'm just concerned about the number of parts that I'm going to have to replace. I'm working my way through these parts of the shutter to see what can be reused amongst this mess and what cannot. This is the moving flash contact, and it's bent ridiculously out of shape. I can't even get it out to straighten it up in that position, so I'm just having to straighten it as best I can and unhook it. And I want to see if I can reclaim that. It looks to me as though the moving arm here will work. It appears to move. I think that part will be okay, but the contact is just a dog's breakfast. I've got one here somewhere. It should look something like that. So I want to see if I can straighten that up, because to be honest I don't have an endless supply of parts. So if I can rescue that, that would be a bonus. But if not, well, I'll just use my replacement and move on. Yeah, it's not a happy thing. Alright, I'll work on that for a few minutes with tweezers and pliers, and hopefully I can make something of that. Well, here's my model. That's the one from my spares, and here's the one from the camera that I've straightened out. And I'm pretty happy that that fairly closely resembles that. It might be slightly different at the tip there. I might have to do a bit more work on that. The next piece I've got to try and rescue is the shutter release. And the main problem with the shutter release here was it's slightly bent, and its spring is even more bent out of shape. It doesn't tuck around there properly at all. So that's a very fine spring on there. I'm going to attempt to square that up, but I don't know what my chances are. I've still got to straighten the arm itself. I've got a potential replacement here, but it's no thing of beauty. It's got corrosion marks on it, but it is straight and it does have a good spring. So I need to see if I can straighten that spring up. Well, not straighten it up, return it to the shape it began life as, which is not like that. That's been quite heavily distorted. There's no point trying to guess how they made that mess. I'll work on that and see how I'll get on. There's no point watching because you're not going to see anything. This is all pretty tiny stuff, and it could take a while. I'm fairly happy with the shape of that spring and the lever now. I think that'll probably work, so I can put that to one side. And that completes the pieces that I can reuse. This piece I'm a little bit dubious about because it's very scratched up. There's a lot of scratches in there. I don't really know why. And it may or may not work fine. It seems to move fairly freely. I will try to use that component, but we'll just have to see how we get on. So I've got, apart from that, I've got other components. See if we can get those. Well, we'll need a flash contact to start off with, and the little metal plate that goes under the flash contact. We will need a B lever and the B lever spring. We'll need the detent spring for our flash sync lever, and the missing screw from the cover. I think that pretty much finishes it. I think that's enough there. With those parts I should be able to complete the shutter. So I will start gathering these pieces up and start building the shutter back together again. Start with the high speed spring. Just put a bit of molybdenum paste through the centre of that. Now, the moving flash contact, I've got to get this threaded through there. It's always a bit of an act. That's threaded through. I'll put that in place. Oh, we've got to get our flash contact in first. Jumping the gun here. Normally that's the first thing that I would put in a shutter. Just checking that plate there, that there's nothing stuck down there. It didn't seem to want to sit as flat as I would have expected. And the flash contact. Now there was a change of shape in the flash contacts during the manufacture of these shutters. So I'm hoping, because it's not really easy to tell from that mess that I took out of this shutter, I'm hoping that this is the correct one. I think it'll work regardless. And we have the fixing screw that originally came with the shutter, so that can go in. That looks neat and tidy. Our moving flash contact. Let's get this in position. It's going to need some tweaking because I can see that contact's not the right shape. That doesn't surprise me. I don't think it's far wrong. That lever's not moving smoothly. Why not? Oh, this moving lever's twisted at the end. That's going to have to be straightened up. Okay. Yep. I have to compare that with a known good one. See what I'm trying to achieve in terms of shape. Oh yeah, it's got a definite twist on it. Some of these tiny components that you find in shutters have actually been hardened, and as a result it means that if you start bending things, it's not uncommon for them to decide that they don't want to go into a different shape and they'll snap. So be aware of that. Some steel components may be quite stiff and brittle. Right, I'll put the screw back in there and see if we can make that thing go. There it is. I want to see the lever move freely, and then I'll do some fine adjustment of that spring contact. That looks to me like that would go. That contact is definitely, that's better. That looks like that's going to work. So we'll tighten that screw up and move on to the next bit. So all I've replaced there is the fixed flash contact. I've straightened up the moving flash contact and the arm that moves the flash contact. Okay, let's move on. There are two little brass standoffs that go here. And this plate. Now this plate should have a spring on it. A detent spring for the flash sink lever. And that should be clipped on right here on that boss. See if I can get that in place. Like that. And we'll see if I can manoeuvre this thing into place. Do a change of tweezers. That goes over a stud there, over the pivot of the wheel there. That's looking good. Now this screw goes here. That would be misplaced to the other end of that plate. The flash sink lever goes here. This was at the wrong end of the plate previously. Tighten those two screws up. I've got to get that detent spring into position. It's busy trying to get away. That's that. Seems a little bit stiffer than normal, but it looks like it's seated there. That spring may be slightly out of shape. Still, it does its job, so we'll consider that a win. If we press this lever, it should make the flash sink mechanism run. It did. Now, where's the tab that sets that? Is that gone? There should be a tab here. That ain't present. There should be a tab under here that I can set, and that's not, I can't see it, so something is wrong. Let's take this off. I'm going to have to do a comparison of parts, find out what's missing. Take that spring off since it's so keen to get away. So something else is broken that I hadn't immediately spotted. That little lever, that's still working. Oh yes, there's something not right there. Just remove these components. This piece. What's going on here? Oh yeah, the lever's snapped off on the base of that, so that piece is toast. We're going to need a replacement. And I have one. Right, well, I'll assemble, get this apart. check my pieces. Yeah, this tab here is snapped off on that one. With that piece missing, it would be impossible to cock the flash sync mechanism. So that's broken. We'll put that in our pile of rubbish. Fortunately, I've been able to recover most of those other pieces. Let's get this spring seated correctly. And I'm fortunate that this piece does have that spring present too, because those springs are very fine and sometimes break, and when they're broken it all becomes useless. Let's get that spring hooked into place. And put a touch of molybdenum paste on this. Now, I'm not overly surprised that something was broken that I hadn't previously spotted, because some of these pieces are very, very tiny. And you know, if a little tiny lever is missing, you can't always spot it. See if we can get this to move. That moves. Needs to be round about there. One more notch, I think. No, a bit more. No, it's still too far. What I've got to get is this timing correct. That's it. Oh, I really want to get that spring in position before I close this up. Let's see if I can do that. Yes. Okay, so far so good. Okay, that works. Get that screw tightened. Let's see what happens. That runs down. That's the cocking lever, that's present. That looks like that will go. We need the B lever in place, and the B lever is the next component to go in here. This was completely missing, of course, from the shutter previously. And the B lever spring, well, I've got the B lever spring on the appropriate screw there, so I won't bother taking it off the screw just to put it on the other existing screw. We'll just swap the lot over. And see if I can hook this into position. That's good. And at the other end it needs to be on the inside of this piece, like that. And that allows us to cock it here, and it remains cocked until it's released. We'll try it on the other setting. That cocks and it releases. Okay, that's looking promising. Our shutter release lever, let's see if I can get that down in position. That looks okay. Its return spring here is looking a bit funny. No, that's okay, I think. Let's cock this. It's good. Well, it's looking fairly promising. Now, we're not off scot-free yet, because this lever here on the top plate, which is, I've got one here somewhere, this lever may well be bent out of shape. If it's bent out of shape, it will not release the shutter correctly. It's quite scarred up, so I don't know what's been done to it, if anything. But it's at least possible that that will work. This spring here, I'm looking at the state of that. I straightened it up, but I'm not convinced it's going to do its job particularly well. No, it's sticking. The spring is too bent, I think. It should move freely, so it sticks. Can't have that sticking. So I think we're going to be in for a new spring there, unless I can straighten that one up better than I've currently managed. Yeah, all those wiggles in that spring at this end are no good. They're just going to cause me grief. So we'll just pop that spring aside. I don't think we'll be using that. I'll find another one.